My name is Charlie, and today I will be discussing anthropophagy, or the practice of eating humans. So, cannibalism. Do you like it? How much do you know about it? Well, today I'm specifically going over what's in the title. But before we begin that, the reasons someone might be a cannibal. There are 3 of them that it essentially boils down to, and let's get into that. So first, institutionalized or learned cannibalism. It's when you eat people because the people around you do, and you were raised that way. It's usually seen in tribes people, and it's often done as a form of mortuary cannibalism, which means you eat the dead, often as a spiritual, way to release their spirits into the next life. And funny thing about institutionalized cannibalism, especially in tribes, is when people go and explore and they find those tribes, sometimes they'll be invited to sit down for a nice meal, and you can see where this is going. And that is called innocent cannibalism, or accidental, because you didn't know. Who can blame you? You didn't know, you just wanted to have some meat with your new friends. And it turned out that it wasn't pork, it was long pig. Isn't that nice? Well, no one will hold you a cannibal, so it doesn't matter. And another example of institutionalized cannibalism that isn't about tribes would be the custom of the sea, which was essentially when a ship was out on the sea for too long that they ran out of food, they'd draw lots, and whoever was the luckiest was the meal for the rest of them. This practice was mostly stopped in 1884 because of the case R versus Dudley and Stevens, which pretty much boiled down to, necessary or not, it's still murder. So maybe you should have waited until he was dead to eat him? Would that have changed things? Probably not. Who can prove anything? But the practice is mostly ended after that. Now, before we go to our next reason, I just want to go over quickly, there are 2 types of institutionalized cannibalism. One would be endocannibalism, which is, like I said earlier, often mortuary cannibalism, which is eating within the community to honor the dead. And then there's exocannibalism, which is basically the opposite. You eat those outside of your community, usually enemies, to steal any good traits they have, and sometimes just to eat them because they're meat, protein. Ooh. And that very need for protein is what leads us into our second reason, survival cannibalism. This is probably the most, or least, frowned upon reason to be a cannibal, or at least I think it should be. It's when there are times of starvation or famine, there's no food sources, so what do you turn to? And that's just the thing, the guy who lives next door. This is seen in the myth of the Wendigo, where you get lost in the woods, there's nothing to eat. Maybe you have a friend with you. Unlucky guy, because he's what you eat. And boom, you lose all your humanity, and you're a monster who can never be satiated. Just increasingly hungry, only for human flesh. Now, that is a myth. But a real example is the Donner Party. They got lost on a trail, ran out of food, and what did they have after they ran out of food? Why, each other, of course. So what became food? Why, each other, of course. And isn't that just nice? What a charming example of a happy American family. Just living the dream. But let's say you aren't eating people out of necessity or for survival, and you aren't eating them because of the way you were raised or institutionalized reasons, then your reason would be due to psychopathology, which is a mental disorder. So, Let's say you just think about eating people. You're just curious about it. Maybe you're interested. Like if someone offered it, you'd do it. But that usually doesn't happen. It's mostly in the fantasy sense where you're just thinking about it a lot. Rarely comes to fruition. Unfortunately, it does sometimes, though. Issei Sagawa. He fantasized about eating people extensively and then, keeping them around after he ate the parts he liked. He wrote a manga about it. It's kind of astounding, the audacity of that guy. But that's enough on him. My favorite example of psychopathology would be Hannibal Lecter, a fictional cannibal, but also probably the most popular example I could think of. He eats people, and he reasons it by being superior to them. They are mere pigs, and to him, they are pork. But he is mentally ill, and that's why. Third type under this category, auto-cannibalism. Auto means self, like automatic. It's working on its own. So if you're an auto-cannibal, you eat yourself. That's taken looking like a snack to a way higher level than was probably initially intended as a turn of phrase. Probably shouldn't eat yourself, but if you do, well, there's studies, very outdated studies, that say it could be beneficial. So, let's get into that. Now let's finally get into what this video is actually about. Medicinal cannibalism, which is when you eat someone for health reasons. Now there are actual health benefits to eating someone. Nutrition, obviously. You take a guy, measure him up next to the animal that's the closest in size, probably the similar nutritional value, similar protein content, so really humans are just animals. Mammals, so if you like eating mammals, you'll probably like eating a person if you didn't know it was a person. And it's described as tasting pretty good. So who knows, maybe you have and you just don't know. You are an innocent cannibal, my friend, until proven otherwise. Have fun with that information. Now, where did the belief come from that the human body could heal itself by eating itself, that you could get weird old benefits? I don't know. But it was the popular belief at the time that because it was proven that the human body could heal itself, that it could also be used to heal other people. So it was a practice, let's go over China first, dates back to the Tang Dynasty, which is 618 to 907 AD. It was endorsed by medicine of the time that young people, especially young women, would feed their loved ones who were ill pieces of themselves to try to cure the illness. It was often voluntary, not always, but most of the reported cases were voluntary, where, like, the best child would just, like, take off a piece of their arm, put it in a pot, and cook it for dear old pops, and make them feel all better with your medical skin. There was a brief anti-cannibalism period after this, because people were starting to suggest, hey, maybe we shouldn't eat each other. But they were still acknowledging the potential benefits of eating each other, so it was a little counterproductive. And then we've got the Cultural Revolution, which was 1966 through 1976, and it was caused by social political unrest between the classes, and it led to the resurgence of cannibalism in the medical sense, and kind of in a revenge sense, like, just don't like this guy, I'm gonna eat his guts, instead of hate his guts. It was class enemies. They were eaten for healing. There are two very interesting cases that I looked into for this. They were teachers. One I'm going to call Mengshan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's the county he was from. And the story goes, he heard that eating a beauty's heart could cure disease. So he took one of his students, denounced her. She was only like 13 or 14. And some violent mob came, did what violent mobs did. And then he went up to her corpse when they were done, ripped the heart out, and brought it home to just enjoy all nice at his leisure. And then there's Kangwoo. That's less malicious, more interesting in my opinion, but less murdery in a sense. He didn't do the murdering. He was just kind of invited by one of his students. One of them killed the vice principal, and they were just feasting on his insides. So the student was like, "You have stomach issues," and held up a finger-sized like piece of flesh, and it was just like, "This'll fix it." So the teacher was like, "What the heck?" And he ate it. So both teachers and the students ate the vice principal. Now let's take a brief look at ancient Rome. They thought that wounded gladiators, which were common if you know of the Colosseums, they thought their blood could be used to cure epilepsy, which is, I don't know where they got that idea. I didn't see that in my research, but very interesting. And that led to the practice being continued in Europe for the supposed healing properties of the human body and blood. So, Europe. We all know about mummies, hopefully. And then we probably also know about how disrespected they've been. Crushed up, powdered into what's called mummia. It's been used in paint and other things like that. It's also been used as medicine. People have eaten it. They thought it would stop internal bleeding or just generally aid in the healing process. They were wrong, but they thought it, so they did it. And this practice hit its peak in the 16th century, and it tapered off in the early 20th century. Who knows if there are still secret practitioners, but let's hope not. Something I found very interesting about Europe in the 17th through 18th century is that besides just eating people for the health benefits, they would also use them in ways you wouldn't usually think of. Like, let's say someone got executed, you can take the fat from him, rend it, dry it, powder it, put it in a jar, and they sell it super high demand at apothecaries. It was not eaten, just rubbed on the skin. It was a very common remedy for pain, inflammation, joint issues, and scars that just wouldn't fade away quick enough. So, get your retinol cream or your man grease, which is what it was called. Now, whether it actually helps with healing skin or anything that they thought, that's up to interpretation, but it's good that they didn't eat it. They were just rubbing it on themselves, because human flesh has this certain side effect for other humans, which is a prion disease called Kuru. So what exactly is Kuru? It's a prion disease. Common prion diseases that are discussed would be mad cow disease, which a while back, I'm not sure people still even talk about it, but infected burgers get people really sick and get the other cows very sick, very dead. And then there's Alzheimer's, which is very prevalent in humans, and it's a natural prion disease where your brain just kind of loses its substance over time. That's basically what Kuru does, except more maliciously. It's very rare, very incurable, and very fatal. It was formerly common in the Fore people of Papua New Guinea because they practiced funerary cannibalism. They'd eat their loved ones to help pass the spirit on into the next life. And the people who were in charge of eating those who they loved were often the women and children, so Kuru was most prevalent in them because they ate the brains, which is where the prions are held, the infected prions. And funerary, just to circle back to earlier, is institutionalized cannibalism. And it's pretty honorable, I think, to want to eat someone in order to help them pass on. Like, cool. That's very nice of you. The consequences, much less honorable, much more horrific. Lose sense of self, start giggling and shaking. Which is where the word originates from. It's the four-word kuria, guria, for shake. And shake you do. You shake it off like Taylor Swift on cocktail of drugs. Horrible. Horrible. Let me just emphasize. You don't want Kuru. If you're gonna eat anyone, just don't eat the brain, really. Please. That would be horrible. You'll suffer, and so will everyone around you. Stay away from the brain, I swear, please. Do not touch it. Just eat your foot or something, like that guy who served tacos to his friends. Foot tacos. Don't eat the foot tacos, because it's a prion disease, which you think prion, you think brain tissue. But that isn't the only place that prions are found. They're also found in subcutaneous or fat tissue. So, you take a bite out of some random guy, not even his brain, there's still a chance that in 10 to 50 years, which is the incubation period, you're just gonna suddenly start giggling up and shaking all about, and you won't even know why because it's been so long. That's one of the really scary things about Kuru. You can eat someone, not even know you did, and then 10 to 50 years later, you're not yourself. And there's no way to change course once it goes that far. But speaking of changing courses, Kuru is also kind of a helpful disease in a roundabout sense, because studying the effects of Kuru on the human brain can help with research into other prion diseases. As I said earlier, Alzheimer's, mad cow, things along that vein of illness. It's really cool. It's an unintended health benefit of cannibalism. You eat someone, and sure, you might die, but they can use it to help other people not die. So, take one for the team? I'm not gonna, but if you want to, that is your prerogative, and I half support it. Do what you want. Well, that about does it. Thanks for watching. Hello. Fun fact. The early 1600s, human wine was made in Germany. It was made by chopping up human flesh and mixing it and mashing it with aloe and myrrh. And then it was cured into wine. Some good old vino. Now that about does this. So, let's just say all the reasons for cannibalizing someone can be boiled down to medical in one way or another. There's nutrition, mental instability, and then there's just the outdated beliefs that flesh can heal you. So it's really up to you whether or not to believe eating your buddy's pinky toe can fix your IBS. But I'd recommend never eating a human brain, regardless of the sought-after benefits. Just don't. That would have both social and medical consequences. That would definitely not be worth it. In the US, though, it's only technically illegal in Idaho. In other states, they just legalize murder and desecrating a corpse. So, do what you will. I'm just saying, and not judging. Have a fantastic day or whatever. Bye.